Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Limit-Free Living. I'm Liz Bull, and I am your host, and I'm so glad you're here. So limit-free living is about having a body and a life you love. And in this show, we give you tips and tricks, information, and inspiration for getting there. And today I am so pleased to have with me my dear friend, Dr. Cheryl Okoli, who is the owner, founder of Shalom Eagle's Wings. And she's one of those people who is just fascinating. That's all there is to it. She was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Yes, that's Canada, frozen north. If you've ever been there, you know what I'm talking about. But she also grew up partly in Nigeria and partly in Qatar. I mean, like, who does that, right? So it's just part of that, secret sauce that makes Cheryl Cheryl and the fascinating woman that she is. And Cheryl is here today. She's going to be talking about dreams, nighttime dreams, as sources of insight and direction for corrections in the workplace and in life in general. And she just has a fascinating background because she's been a researcher. She loves to get to the root causes of things, especially in the workplace. She looks at administrative evidence-based practices for organization and culture. She's all about improving the culture of workplaces. Is that right, Cheryl? Have I got that right? Or am I totally messing this up? Yeah, so that's what it is. And if any of you have ever worked in a workplace where there are a lot of people, it's not always a smooth ride. They don't always get on. And Cheryl is an expert at looking at what's not working and getting it back together again so that it does work. So she's looking at workforce development and partnerships and culture and financial practices and utilizing strategic management and conflict resolution to get everything working smoothly and properly the way it should. Now, her passion is cultivating healthy workplaces. And she loves to use holistic wellness to do this. By holistic, you might wonder what I mean by holistic, or what more importantly, Cheryl means by holistic. It means caring for the physical, mental, social, cultural, and spiritual domains of the human being. And I'm just going to give you a little sneak preview here, but she's got something really special coming up in September. Really special, people. It's called the Renata Wellness and Recreation Retreat for healthcare providers. So if you're a healthcare provider, or if you know of somebody who's a healthcare provider, and frankly, who doesn't, tell them about this. It's going to be amazing. So Cheryl is a global citizen. Like I mentioned, she grew up in those other continents and she's a traveler. Oh, there's a reason we're friends, right? But she still calls Calgary, Alberta home. So without further ado, I bring to you my dear friend, Dr. Cheryl Okoli. Cheryl, take it away. Talk to us. Tell us about dreams.
Oh, thank you very much to be invited. Yeah, it's such an honor to talk about dreams on such a platform and to reach the masses. So dreams, nighttime dreams. Now, if I were to ask all of you, do you sleep at night or do you sleep during the day? Chances all of you will raise your hands, right? Now, if I were to ask, thank you for that hand. Now, if I were to ask all of you, do you have nighttime dreams? Some may say yes, some may say no. But actually, if you're a human being that sleeps, you dream. The things that you may or may not remember your dreams, okay? Now, we're talking about nighttime dreams, and some people will be like, how on earth are we talking about this topic and how is it relevant to the workplace or to our personal lives? Well, we're going to focus more on the workplace, but yes, we can infuse personal lives as well. But did you know that when you dream, there are different schools of thoughts as to the sources of the dreams, right? Some might be like, oh, it's just your subconscious that's basically filtering information or processing images or information as you sleep at night. Some other school of thought might be like, you know what, your dreams are from external inputs coming into you. And when they mean by that, they could say, oh, maybe it could be from a spiritual source, like maybe from God Almighty, it could be from an evil source. Some could be like, oh, it's the pizza you ate. Or for some, it could be, oh my goodness, all those medications I'm on is what's causing me to have these dreams. But before we proceed, I want to be transparent. Dear Liz mentioned that I do look at things holistically. And from a spiritual perspective, I am being transparent right now to mention that when I talk about dreams and more so dream interpretation, I take it a step further and talk about it from a dream counseling perspective. And I believe 100% from a spiritual perspective that God, because I believe that God could speak to us through our dreams. And some of these dreams are to correct us, to warn us, to inform us, to give us strategies, to give us creative ideas. If I were to stop and ask you, have you heard of Abraham Lincoln? Some of you might be like, yeah, we have. Well, actually, he's one of my favorite presidents of all times. According to, if you were to research and then online search, he actually had what some might call a premonition of his death. Research it. Albert Einstein, you've heard of the theory of relativity, right? His theory was inspired by a dream that he had. Again, research that, and it all had to do with, he basically saw cows surrounded by an electric fence. Another person was observing this, and the person thought, oh, they all jumped up in unison, and another party thought, no, they jumped up one at a time. So did you see what just happened there? One person perceived it to be cows jumping up in unison, another perceived it to be jumping up one at a time, hence relativity. That's how he came up with his theory. So it's very fascinating what dreams can tell us, right? So I come from a biblical lens of dream interpretation. I'm a Christ follower, so I'm just being transparent right there. And the reason why I say that is, if you were to have a dream and you were to go to different sources, so you were to do a Google search, depending on what source you come up with, you might get some explanation. You go to someone in the Far East, they might give their own perception of what your dream means. You come here in the West, because I am based in Calgary, Alberta, they might give you their own perception. But then again, not many people even believe that dreams have salient information, right? So Liz, I can keep going on and on, but yeah, so there are different categories of dreams. Feel free to interrupt me if you need to pitch it.
I am, just because I have,
Yes.
know, I have a wacky sense of humor.
Okay.
I come from a very long line of dairy farmers. So
Okay.
my childhood was spent around cows, and the thought of them all jumping up together was cracking me up. So if you were wondering why my face was a little strange when you were talking about the cows jumping, the fact that cows jumping up at all is hilarious, quite honestly, as an image to me. But I'm sorry, I just had to put that in. It just cracked me up.
It's all good. And it had to do with
keep going.
It's all good. But I'm sure all of you listeners are going to be researching, oh, is what Dr. Cheryl accurate? What is this all about? Research it, yeah. And there are many more people all through history who've had very interesting dreams. So yeah, so going back to dreams, there are different categories of dreams. Let's start with intrinsic and extrinsic. With intrinsic, it has to do with within. So basically, when you dream of something, it could be all about you. Or if it's extrinsic, the images or the people or the symbols in your dream has to do with someone external to you. So if it helps you, extrinsic, external, intrinsic, internal, if that helps you remember the difference, okay? So those are the two main categories of dreams. Now, sub-arms of that, you could have what are considered warning dreams, creative dreams, encouragement dreams, strategy dreams, colors. One thing I need to mention, when you see colors in your dreams, and by the way, let me pause here and say something. This is so fascinating. So I'm wearing blue. So when I mentioned I use a biblical lens of interpretation. What that means, first and foremost, is yes, I do look at examples of dreams in the Bible. Believe it, there are multiple references of dreams and visions in the Bible. So I always go, the Bible is my first source of reference, if you will. What examples are similar to what I've dreamt or dreamed someone's asking me to help them interpret? So there I should pause and say, I'm honored and humbled that the good Lord has given me this gift to help people interpret your dreams. I should say that, okay?
So I give that.
Yeah, so I give him all the credits. I take no credit of my own. So talking about the color blue, from a biblical lens, blue means on the positive. So that's a good thing. Every color has a positive meaning and a negative meaning. Blue means revelation. It could also mean communion. And you know what's so interesting? Last night, I kid you not, I had this dream. I had multiple dreams. And one dream that stuck with me, and I'm still like, what on earth did that mean? I saw a piece of blue, kind of like a blue cloth, kind of like just fall and go like that. And the color was royal blue. And when I woke up, I was like, okay, that's interesting. What was that all about? I was like, was that a mantle of revelation that just fell? What was that? So I'm still pondering over it and praying what it fully means. But it's just so interesting, right? But anyway, so blue in the positive could mean that. But let's say, for example, if you dream of your friend or colleague and they're in blue and you're crying, that could be a hint right there. Either they may be anxious in a negative sense, the blue will be negative. It will be they're anxious, maybe experiencing depression. And then think of it from a cultural perspective. When you say someone is blue, what does that mean? So you see, with dream interpretation, there's skill to it. And what I mean by there's skill, yes, you can learn what different symbols and colors mean and context mean. But sometimes those colors won't mean what they traditionally mean. That's where I believe you need the revelation to be able to discern accurately.
I love that. Coming from a design background, I've done a lot with color theory and color meaning and how people respond to color from a marketing perspective and all of that, right? And that whole business about blue inspiring trust, and banks typically, any organization that wants to be trusted, typically everything is blue. Blue, blue, blue,
Yeah.
blue, 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 blue. But then if you think about music and emotions, or, it's in our language. Oh, I was feeling so blue. Look at music, the blues.
Yeah.
It's always about something sad, somebody done somebody wrong, there's something about it, the blues is always about the sad story of a man and a woman. And it's like, oh my goodness. So it's so fascinating to me that you're talking about, there's yet another possibility for blue.
An excellent point. And here's another one. Again, context matters. What is happening in the dream? Blue, and even though I said the positive means revelation and communion, it can also mean healing. So you'd be like, how on earth does it mean healing? So again, first and foremost, if I would take in the biblical lens again. So there was a story that was mentioned in the Bible once of a woman who had an issue of blood. So basically, women, think of it this way. So what I can think she had was maybe she had a menorrhagia, which is heavy bleeding, because according to the story, for years, she's gone to doctors. No one could help her. She'd spent all her fortune, no one could help her. So she reaches out, she heard that a man named Jesus was in the crowd. So she's going over amidst the crowd. She presses through and touches the hem of his garment, the hem rather of his garments. Now, according to tradition, that hem might have a blue tinge to it. So if you look at some of the Hebrews and their shawls, their prayer shawls, it's white and it's blue, and their tassels. So that's where one of the contexts of what blue could mean healing comes from a biblical lens. But like you said, culturally could also mean calmness, like you said, peace. Some say it's a peaceful color as well, right? So again, context is key, right? So now let's make things a little bit more complicated. Sometimes you can have what's called play on words. I'll give you a personal example. In dreams, play of words manifested in dreams. So I had an instance whereby I was with a friend at the time, and this is the reason why I say a friend at the time, we'd had a disagreement of some sort. And the resolution session or attempt at it wasn't the best. So shortly after that, I had a very interesting dream. Guess what the dream was? So in the dream, I saw herself and her husband, and I saw like a divider. And then on the ground, guess what I saw? I saw a makeup. Yes, women, our makeup sets, just a random makeup set on the ground. And on top of the makeup set, I saw a bag of nuts. So when I woke up, I knew exactly what that meant. Can any of you guess what it means? Well, play on words. Makeup is to make up, but it was saying the makeup session was nuts.
It's crazy.
I know, play on words, right?
I love it. I love it. The makeup part I got right away, but the nuts part was like,
You see right there? So that's why, yeah, that's why you have to be very careful who you go to, because I bet you if someone would have woken up, they might have gone online to research what do nuts symbolize? What is makeup? But don't forget, I remember there was a divider in that dream. So when you put it all together, the division in the relationship, something was divided, and there was a barrier, which made the makeup session nuts, right? Right? Yeah. Okay. So now let's take another one. So let's take the work setting, for instance. So let's say, for example, randomly, okay, in a dream, imagine in a dream, you're in your workplace and you see 3 dogs walking down a hallway and they're snapping at each other. And you wake up and you're like, what on earth does that mean? And some of you might be like, what does that have to do with anything? Dogs, hallway, workplace. Well, number one, now that's where dreams can be literal or symbolic or metaphorical. So you saw 3 dogs and they're snapping at each other. Now, dogs could, in a cultural sense, could represent man's best friend, right? And when we think about man's best friends, dogs are known to be loyal. But the fact that we're snapping at each other right there tells you it's not positive. You see 3 dogs walking down a hallway. Hallways in dreams can mean transitions, okay? The fact the setting was your workplace tells you that, okay, let me try and give a general interpretation of what that can mean. You're 3 individuals, not necessarily literal dogs. You're 3 individuals who will be in transition and they'll be at odds with each other. Now, the color of the dogs can be symbolic. So let's say they're brown, white, or brown and black, or brown and green. So let's say you see a dog that's brown and green. You're like, that doesn't exist in real life. You're right, it doesn't. But what does green mean negatively? And now everything in that dream will be interpreted negative. Why? Because the context of the dream was negative. They were snapping at each other. They weren't playing with each other. So in a negative context, if one of the dreams, the dogs were, let's say, brown and green, or black and green, for instance, green would be negative. In that context, green would mean there could be envy, it could be greed, for instance, it could be immaturity, right? When we talk about, oh, this person's so green. So again, depending on the context of what we're talking about, it could be they're immature, because when there's growth, something is growing, it could be small, right? So in that context, that dog that is green and black can be positive or negative, but in that dream is negative. So black could mean evil, could mean death, famine, but the green part is the key. There is jealousy probably going on there, okay? So now 3, another way with numbers, positive or negative. 3 can mean union, unity. So from biblical lens, God is 3 in 1, God, Father, and Holy Spirit, 3 in 1. But the 3 may not also mean 3 literal dogs or 3 literal individuals. It could also mean in 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days. Yes.
So this is mixing it up, isn't it?
So there's advanced dream interpretation, and so everything you dream of can have a superficial meaning in terms of what apparent meaning could be, and then there could be layers of interpretation. And sometimes your dreams, you may not be able to come to the interpretation right away. Sometimes it takes years. if it's speaking about future. So now let's go back to categories of dreams. So I talked about, let's summarize a little bit. Intrinsic, dreams about you. Extrinsic, dreams about somebody else. We talked about how the different colors may have a positive and negative, for instance. Now let's talk about dreams that are about now, or dreams that are about prophetic. So I can talk about myself as an example. So I've had dreams that spoke to my future, even about what I'm doing. So for example, I'll share one. So this platform, Win-Win Women, another way that I also know Liz is I'm also a show host on a platform called Win-Win Women. Now, how I got on here, number one, they found me out, but how did I agree to even step into this organization called Win-Win Women? I had a dream. Now, sit back, buckle up. So in the dream, I saw myself observing happenings outside. And what I saw was a dinosaur. And the dinosaur was nursing its young ones. And to the side, I saw a man proposing to a woman. And what he was proposing to her wasn't your classic ring. It was, if you can envision the Middle Eastern or South Asian culture of that jewelry that looks like a hand jewelry that goes into a ring, if you can picture that.
Yeah.
So that's what he was proposing to her with. But I remember the ring component was white. I remember that, okay. And then in the background, I heard people asking questions about me, my background, my roots. And then when I woke up, I was like, what? Oh no, before I woke up, I noticed that dinosaur turned into a dog and then turned into a human. And when I woke up, I was like, what on earth? Number one, dinosaurs are extinct. Number two, they never nursed their young ones. They gave birth, they laid eggs. And I was like, what was that with the proposal going on? What was that all about? Finally, with me reflecting, I had a partial interpretation, but I presented it to someone who was more advanced than myself at the time. And this is what the interpretation of the dream is. A dinosaur, you can think of it as ancient. That's one way to look at it. Mm. Number two, you could think of it as having monumental impact. That's another way to think of it. Mm. So the fact it was nursing its young ones, you can think of it as kind of mentorship.
Yeah.
Let's put it all together. So the founder of the Win-Win Women, she's much older. She has monumental impact in terms of what she's done around the world.
Oh my gosh.
And the key was mentoring other people take on the torch of the work she's doing. And the people proposing, the guy proposing to the girl, what was that? They're coming to me waiting for my commitment. Will you commit to what we're inviting you to do? And remember how I said people were asking questions about me in the dream? The same thing. They were obviously asking questions. How do you know what Cheryl? What is Cheryl about? Dr. Cheryl? Right? So that's one example how, again, image in your dreams may not be literal as to what they mean. They could be symbolic. Oh yes, and the part about the dinosaur turning into a dog and then back to a human and then back to a dinosaur was meaning that relationship. Number one, it told me that that dinosaur wasn't a literal dinosaur at the beginning. Remember how I mentioned a dog could be man's best friend or man's friend? So it was suggesting that that relationship will become a little bit more personal and not just arm's length.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Cheryl, I want to hear more about your dreams, and I'm going to share one of mine with you, and you can see what you make of it. But before we do that, I don't want to lose the opportunity for you to tell people about your retreat, because I find that fascinating. So tell us the deal. What's going on and when?
Okay, the retreat, yes. So the retreat is called Renata Wellness and Recreation Retreat. And I want to say why. So I have a healthcare background of just over 20 years. I've functioned in different roles, front lines, management, consultant, the list goes on. I have seen, even prior to the pandemic, healthcare providers were burning out. Even more so during and post-pandemic. And some of them really have been traumatized. Some are exiting the industry. So in 2016, it's funny she says, tell me about your dreams, but in 2016, think the idea of Renata, I call the retreat Renata for short, was conceived, not birth, conceived. In 2018, believe it or not, I actually had a dream whereby that's where the name came from, Renata, a dream in 2018. But anyway, so I was like, you know what? Last year, between 2018 and last year, I was kind of networking with people, dabbling with the idea of this retreat. Finally, I was like, you know, the time is now. I must do something about it. So, cut a long story short, the inaugural opening is going to be September 23rd, 2023, God willing, in Cochrane, Alberta, in the very beautiful picturesque area. And what can we expect of that day? There's going to be light learning on conflict resolution and organization development, lots of recreation, because remember, it's a place of rejuvenation. There's going to be a class of group counseling because some of these healthcare providers have experienced burnout or maybe bullying and harassment, and all their meals will be included. But the original model is 3 days, 3 nights of what I just mentioned and much more that I haven't mentioned. Lots of fun, dance class, croquet, massage therapy. There's going to be dream counseling as well, because I want them to look at their work dreams to see their insights for them as well. So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
I love it. So how do you get, what's Cochrane close to?
Oh, Calgary. It's very close to Calgary, Alberta. So I live in the northwest of Calgary. So from my door to the retreat place is 40 minutes. So if you live in Calgary or Edmonton, it might be maybe about 2 hours. But it's a beautiful gem of a location, the Crossing. I highly recommend you Google it. Even better, go to my website, renata.care. www.renata.care, and to tell you all about the history of Renata. And if you go to the events page, you tell you a little bit more about the events and what we believe and stand for. So we have a team of people who believe in this venture and this cause. And one thing, when I say healthcare providers, please, I want you to understand something. I don't want it to be so stringent that people who need our services are excluded. Yes, my primary target are healthcare providers, so people in the front lines, academia, research, administration, management, the list goes on. But if you provide care to the human being in any one of the holistic domains of physical, mental, social, cultural, spiritual, you're more than welcome. If you're a caregiver, non-professional caregiver, we welcome you with open arms. If you belong to a different industry than healthcare industry, plead your case. Either way, we're not going to close our doors to you.
We're not going to bar the door.
No.
So again, that's in September, and the dates again?
September 23rd, 2023.
September 23rd, but it's a 3-day, so 23, 24, 25?
Sorry, the inaugural will be 1 day.
Oh, it's a 1 day. Okay, 1 day.
For this inaugural opening. But
okay.
The model of the retreat is a 3-day thing. But to start with, we're starting with 1 day.
1 day. One blissful day. Right? One blissful day. I love
it. Delicious meal. Scrumptious meal.
I love that part. I love that part. So I see we're almost done, Cheryl. I want to tell you very quickly about this weird dream that I had for years. The dream was I would touch my finger to a pool of water, a very small pool of water, and then it would turn into a tidal wave. Would turn into a tidal wave. And this persisted for years until I really fully embraced being a healer. And specifically being a distance healer, with clients like, in very far-flung places. And then the dream went away. I never had the dream again.
Okay, that's very fascinating. And I have another spin on the interpretation if you want to hear it.
I do, but you know what? We're gonna say we're at 29, and we're gonna get the hook.
No worries.
Thank you everybody for watching. Be sure to stay on because Dr. Cheryl will be with us to answer your questions at a later date. And it's Dr. Cheryl Okoli, Okoli. And remember always, people, do what you can with what you have right now, knowing that you always have way more available to you than you are aware of. So take a breath and take a step. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.